Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap-Up. I am Ben Schneider. With me are Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish, Matt Bro, and Adam Lemeries. And before we get started, we want to give a huge shout-out, as always, to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Deschelle, Mark, and Robin. If I can find the graphic. There we go. Get your names up there. Your support means the world to us. Thank you so much for investing in Grid Network and supporting our coverage of the 2022 motorsports season as the year winds down. We've got a lot to talk about this evening. The Formula One Mexican Grand Prix, the NASCAR Cup Series Round of 8 cutoff race at Martinsville, and SVG doing SVG things in Surfer's Paradise. We have our supercars expert, Adam Lemeries, to talk about that a bit later on in the show. But I think we have to start with a wild ending and video game-like move in the NASCAR race at Martinsville that determined the championship for next weekend at Phoenix.
Yeah, Ben, and video game move is a major understatement. We're talking about Ross Chastain's desperate attempt to make the championship 4 and give Trackhouse a shot to fight for the cup title. On the final lap, Chastain was running 10th and looking to miss out on advancing to the final round of the playoffs. Going down the backstretch, he floored it through turns 3 and 4, right in the wall, all the way around to the checkered flag, taking 5th place from Denny Hamlin, putting Trackhouse in the championship 4 in a jaw-dropping Game 7 moment. This move stems directly from the chaotic playoff format, forcing drivers to do extreme things to keep their title hopes alive. Many were stunned and couldn't believe what we just witnessed. Many left, speechless like I was. Chastain exited the car as the crowd stood up and cheered loudly in approval. And starting with you, Matthew, are you shocked that Chastain was able to pull off that move and make it stick?
Matt, are you there?
Mm-hmm. Have we lost Matthew?
Looks like the connection's very poor.
Yeah. Yeah, Matthew, can you hear us? Well, until Matthew figures that out, I guess, Ben, you go ahead and take that one.
I was
there it goes.
Definitely not shocked, to be honest with you.
Matt, if you can hear us, it looks like it's extremely laggy. So.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, I'm going to recommend you try exiting the stream and coming back in here.
I'm sorry about the internet.
In the meantime, I guess I'll take this first. Kobe, like you were mentioning, I really don't even know what to say. I know we're going to talk about it here, but it's probably the craziest thing that I've ever seen watching this sport in the 16 years that I've been following it. I know they played on the Peacock post-race show. They brought Carl Edwards' move at Kansas on Jimmy Johnson out of the archives there, but Carl dove to the inside and carried way too much speed, then drifted up towards the wall. Yeah, I think that might have been what slowed him down. It would have been interesting if Carl had tried that move right up against the wall and seen if I think that's the entry list. We don't have the results right now. If Carl had done that at Kansas in 2008, right up against the wall, maybe he could have made that stick and done what Ross Chastain did today. I think maybe there's only a couple of tracks where it might work as well as it did today for Ross, but just an absolutely unbelievable move, to say the least. And I think it goes back, Kobe, like you're mentioning, it stems from the playoff format, and that's what Ross Chastain had to do. He was told he needed 2 cars going down the backstretch. There was absolutely no way he was going to be able to get that in one lap except to try something like that. And to his credit, more power to him, he was able to make it work. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about, what we think of the move and the repercussions it might have going forward in the future in just a little bit here. But I'm just as stunned and speechless as everybody was. I mean, that was, completely unexpected. But at the same time, I'm not too surprised that Ross Chastain was the one that thought about it. We can think back to what he tried at Indianapolis with shortcutting the course and, fighting for the lead of the race temporarily with Tyler Reddick there. It's not like Chastain is somebody who hasn't been able to think out of the box like that before. And he made it work, and he might just be hoisting a championship trophy in 7 days' time from now at Phoenix. And maybe it'll pay off for him, maybe it won't, but at least he's put himself in that position now. And like I said, more power to him.
Yeah, certainly more power to Ross Chastain, and I can't believe that he was able to make this move stick. As we've been saying, it's like a video game. Like and we got Matthew back. Matthew, before I finish answering my question, if you're able to do so, you want to give your answer, and then I'll continue with mine.
Absolutely. You want to ask that question again? Now I got to be on my phone, so I apologize. Sometimes when you switch studios for your connection, it goes AWire, and that's why I am holding my phone now instead of my laptop. But what was the question, Kobe? I'd love to answer it.
Are you shocked that Ross Chastain was able to pull off that move and make it stick?
Oh, as I was saying before, my internet had a terrible collapse here in my current location. I'm trying to find the best angle. I'm going to look at you guys right here. I'm not really shocked because Chastain simply has that dog in him. I mean, I know that's a meme, but like when you think about that meme, now you're going to have to think about Ross Chastain. I think if anyone on the NASCAR Cup Series circuit out of the 36 charter drivers would pull something like that in order to make sure they advance into the next round, it immediately I think of Ross Chastain, and I think he just proved it to us. I think the move was very impressive, very spectacular, stupid at the same time though. But we'll get to that though. I mean, it didn't shock me at all. But man, I think that's best thing that could possibly happen for NASCAR in terms of ratings and views on YouTube, social media. Yes, but in terms of how they handled it, like a lot of the drivers are mad, the fans love it, drivers hated it. So I'm not surprised he did it, but at the same time, it's Ross Chastain, and I think he's going to go from Ryan Newman's replacement driver from COVID in 2020 to Spire Motorsports to NASCAR Cup Series champion in 1 week's time.
Matthew, I think you put it perfectly well. Spectacular, but stupid at the same time. And I totally agree with you that this could be a great thing for, I guess, people who are paying attention to NASCAR. I've already seen people from the NFL, from IndyCar, from Formula One, all talking about this. And otherwise, if Ross Chastain had to pull this move, they wouldn't even be talking about NASCAR today. And as I said, it was a jaw-dropping Game 7 moment that NASCAR won when they created this playoff system. And I'm sure you're going to see this on SportsCenter as well. And you're probably going to see it on your local news channel. You're probably even going to see it on your mainstream media as well. It's probably the CBS News, NBC, Fox, CNN, whatever you watch. You're probably going to see it on those channels as well because it was so stunning, something that you'd only see in a video game. And I also agree that being Ross Chastain, I'm not surprised that he was the one who would pull this one off. Say what you want to about him, but he's quite an intelligent race car driver, always trying to push it to the limit. And Ross, like, wow, I'm still speechless thinking about that. I'm probably going to be watching that for the next several hours, thinking to myself, how and why do you even think to do this? It was just wild. And while many were entertained by Ross Chastain's wall riding his way into Phoenix, others weren't so impressed. Kyle Larson said it's not a good look for the sport and called it embarrassing. Chastain entering turns 3 and 4 at full speed on lap 500 was the fastest lap of the race by far at 18.845 seconds. It was crazy watching him enter the corner so much faster than everyone else. However, some are wondering if this could set a new precedent for other drivers pulling off a similar, potentially dangerous move like this again, bringing safety into the conversation. And NASCAR has responded, speaking to the media, by saying Chastain's move was within the bounds of the rulebook, and they plan to discuss any concerns with the drivers later this week. Starting with you, Ben, do you think Larson makes a good point about this being a bad look for NASCAR, which puts an emphasis on entertainment over sport? Also, should NASCAR create a new rule to prevent such a move in the future?
It might be within the bounds of the rulebook today, but I don't know if it's going to be within the bounds of the rulebook in 2023. I've seen some people make some comparisons to the T-Rex car that Jeff Gordon brought in one time, and with Ray and Evernham and everything, and they basically said, look, that was impressive. That car is fantastic. Never bring that back here again. I've got a feeling they might be having some conversations like that later this week, despite what they're saying today. I think they have to come out and say something like that because people are going to be wondering. I mean, if you ever see a speed discrepancy like that, 2 full seconds in Martinsville, what is that in comparison at an F1 track where it takes 1 minute and 30 seconds? That would be like an 8 or 10 second gap from the fastest time to the second fastest. I mean, there would be a track limits violation. They would obviously throw that lap out. I almost feel like this is a track limits violation. Nobody would think to do that if it weren't the last lap of the race and you could coast to the finish line coming off of 4 and it didn't matter. I mean, there are so many different angles to hit here. I want to be careful and make sure we get all of them. But I saw a tweet and a thread here that I think brought up a lot of good points. And this is something I really want to highlight. There was a gate there at turn 4 coming off of where Ross Chastain rode that wall. You can see photographers out here, people close to the fence whose job it is. I mean, it's not like these are fans who are, just mindlessly, aimlessly walking close to a racing surface and to the catch fence. You see people in the orange vests there. It's their job to capture those images and be that close. And there's a gate there. If that gate does not hold that 3,400-pound stock car going wide open, right up against the fence, if that gate pulls a Mike Harmon 2002 or Michael Waltrip 1990 kind of failure at Bristol, we got a lawsuit on our hands. We've got something potentially much worse than a lawsuit on our hands there. So I think that's something that can't get lost in all of this. Like that was a dangerous move. And again, I want to be very clear. More power to Ross Chastain. That's what the system forces these drivers to do. It forces them to make crazy moves like that. We saw it in the Xfinity race yesterday with Ty Gibbs. And, I'm sure, Toby and I, we're going to talk a lot about that on Encore tomorrow, I'm sure. But that's the culture that has been created in this sport to the point where even if Ty Gibbs is locked in, we're used to seeing moves like that. He knows as unpopular as it's going to be, he can get away with it if he's okay with the backlash that comes with it. In this particular case here, obviously it's a different situation, but in my mind, that's still an intentional wreck. Now it's an intentional wreck of yourself, but it's still intentionally damaging your car in order to advance into the next round. Is that not by definition an intentional wreck to advance to the next round? I think it is. And I think that doesn't even get into the whole can of worms that you've opened up here. We've seen clearly the laws of physics allow that now. I mean, I still can't believe when you look at that in real time. I mean, it looks like a video game. It looks like it's sped up. It looks edited, but it's not. We have the lap times. We have the data to show and improve it. Michael Tiller here saying, if you can pull that off in a video game, good. To do it in real life, wow, maybe stupid, but he pulled it off and kept it. More power to Chastain. And I totally agree with that. But at the same time, I just don't know what precedent this sets going forward. We were talking before we came on the show here. Imagine, let's say, I'm trying to think of a good example because we don't usually see more than 4 open cars show up in the Cup Series anymore. But let's say Junior Motorsports brings their 5th car out for, a Cup driver, whoever it is, at some point next season. They don't have the owner's points to fall back on. They come to Martinsville. They need to qualify on time. Junior Motorsports clearly has the budget to go to a backup car. So what would be stopping their driver from just riding the wall, just as Ross Chastain did today in turns 3 and 4, to make sure that they have a lap time that's fast enough to get in the field? And then they maybe have to go to a backup car, but they have the budget to do that. They have the resources to start last and work their way up through the field. I mean, at least they'll be in the race. They'll guarantee that. What's going to stop them from doing that? So I just think, again, as cool as it looks, as cool as the visuals are, as cool as it might be to see people who aren't usually talking about NASCAR talking about it, I'm concerned that in the long run, this might not be a very good thing for the sport at all. And this might be something where people take a look at this and say, well, if that's allowed, I mean, where's the legitimacy in that? In damaging your car and pulling a video game style move and having it work and the system allowing that. And in some ways, again, forcing Ross Chastain to do that. It's just a very, very messy situation. And I'm curious to see once everything calms down here, because in the moment, I think we were all just speechless. We all couldn't believe what we saw. We all thought it was incredibly impressive, and it was, but it was also incredibly risky. And I think in a lot of ways, as we saw in that tweet, incredibly dangerous. And thank the good Lord that gate held up. But if it hadn't, we'd be having a very different conversation with a very different tone right now. And I think that's worth bringing into the conversation, because we can't just ignore that, particularly with the safety concerns. I know we're going to get into Tyler Reddick here in a little bit, but who's to say Ross Chastain couldn't have given himself a concussion by doing that? I mean, there's so many different layers that, again, as cool as it looks, we have to keep in mind here. We got another comment from Michael Tiller. Like I said, a video game sort of move, I agree. But if Chastain did it and was able to pull it off, great. I agree. I get Ben's take, but Ross does need to be careful. And Michael, I think we are probably in agreement there. The visual is amazing. It gives us something to talk about. I mean, it's a wild and crazy move, but in the long run, I just don't know if this is going to be as beneficial for NASCAR as it might seem right now.
And I mean, I can definitely agree with a lot of that and a lot of the points you covered. I'm thankful that I also do not have to cover because you made so many great points. I did want to touch on, I think it makes a good point that this does look bad in the sense for entertainment wise and ratings. This is probably the best thing NASCAR can see. But at the same time, I don't like the idea of Larson being the guy to say that it's a bad look considering he essentially did the same thing back in Darlington of last season. But he also did say that's embarrassing. But yeah, I don't remember him saying that it was embarrassing up until someone else did it that kicked his teammate out of the Owners' Points Championship. So, I mean, I guess it's more of a not hypocritical statement on Larson's part. But, I mean, it's just very weird that we never said anything about it being embarrassing until someone else did it. But this definitely, there should be a new rule created, the Ross Chastain rule. I mean, granted, it shows that there's also shows for NASCAR with the safety of these cars is very confusing because you can back into the rear wall or back into the wall with your rear end and have what we're going to be discussing later about certain issues. But Ross Chastain can open full throttle, ride the wall like he's in Cars 3, the movie, to win at the line against these faster cars. And I think Ross Chastain's healthy. I mean, he seemed pretty happy. I wish that we could have seen the watermelon be smashed, even though he didn't win the race. But I think it depends on what NASCAR does. I think if NASCAR doesn't change any rules, like I think we alluded to earlier in the show, it will put the emphasis more on entertainment over sport, which it won't be a good look for them. But their ratings are not doing very well lately. And I think if this was the Gen 6 car, so the last gen, where they're much safer than the next gen, I think this could be a whole different conversation as well. But with the Gen 7, this car right now, with all these injuries that we're seeing and potentially can see with one that might be developing today, you cannot go through next week without creating a rule for next season because these cars aren't safe enough to be doing crazy stuff like that. Love the move. I think it was the coolest thing, probably the greatest moment we'll see in NASCAR history. But at the same time, it's probably one of the stupidest moves we've ever seen in NASCAR history. But, I mean, Ross Chastain did something he needed to do. And then that could be a whole other discussion with this playoff system causing drivers to do these such things. But I think Larson does make a good point. I think all the drivers do. Joey Logano's statement about it, thinking there should be a rule change. And especially you got to listen to those guys at the end of the day, guys who have been around the sport, guys who are proven winners, know how to get it done. Some of them are probably mad they didn't think about it first, but just the last thing I'm going to talk about Ross Chastain here is just picture in your mind, guys, right now. I want you to imagine you're Chase Briscoe, who's in 9th, Bubba Wallace in 8th, William Byron 7th, Logano 6th, and then Hamlin. Like, imagine you're just sitting there driving on the last lap, and then you just look to your right, and Chastain just zoom right by. Like, I don't know what was going on in their heads, and I would love, if I could go back in time, I would love to go inside Ross Chastain's mind, just when he decided to be like, I'm just going to do it. Full send, let's hope it works. I just wanted to be there for that, but I just wanted to point that out after answering the question, just have a little fun with that one.
Well, if I could just respond real quickly to one point you made, Matt, it doesn't matter if the Gen 6 car, Gen 7 car, it could be the safest car imaginable. That gate is still that gate, and there are still photographers out there completely exposed. So if that gate breaks, the car can be as safe as humanly possible. We've still got a dangerous situation on our hands. So I do get what you're saying, but I think that there's more to it than just the car in that situation there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Ben. And when Larson's talking about this being embarrassing for the sport, I think he's talking about, like the integrity of the sport. How is it, as you've been saying, Ben, about how we want NASCAR to be taken seriously, but in the long run, when you see moves like this happen, it makes you think you can pretty much get away with anything nowadays. And I think moving forward, the best thing NASCAR can do is probably put a rule in place to prevent this from happening again. While it was really cool, in the moment seeing it happen, like you couldn't believe your eyes, as Matthew was saying about the drivers who were going in turns 3 and 4 for the final time at normal speed. If I looked up to the right and saw a freaking missile right in the wall, that's something you really don't expect to see at all. And you got right there, you got a comment from Michael Tiller saying that Kyle Larson has a point. You understand where he's going. Truth is, if the point of passing includes people, as you saw in the picture that Ben shared, then yes, it would be a big embarrassment. Thank you for sharing your comment there, Michael. Yeah, so really a lot of things to unpack from today. Some of the drivers don't really like the move. It'll be interesting to see what NASCAR says later in the week when they address their concerns. And like everyone else in the motorsports world, we've been talking about Ross Chastain for over 20 minutes now, but let's not forget about the race winner and everything else that happened in the Xfinity 500. He needed a walk-off win at the Charlotte Roval, got it done. Needed another walk-off win at Martinsville, another box check. Christopher Bell is going to the championship 4 as the only Toyota representative and driver from Joe Gibbs Racing, with Denny Hamlin getting eliminated from the playoffs. Bell's win may be forgotten by many due to the hoopla over Ross Chastain, but we have to acknowledge Bell for rising to the occasion not once but twice, winning when he needed to win the most in such high pressure situations. Can Bell get another walk-off win and take home the championship too?
Sorry, once again, guys, I apologize with my internet connection, but I can read what you said, Kobe, and I think absolutely. I think Christopher Bell has probably the second most momentum heading into this race. I believe on the pre-race we talked about, do we believe Joey Logano has the most momentum? Now, after watching this race at Martinsville, I think Logano has the second least momentum heading into this race. Obviously, Christopher Bell is up there number one. Like I said with the meme earlier, he got that dog in him too. Simple as that. When it comes to winning when he needs to win, he needed the win to get into the round of 8, so he decided to win. And then he needed the win to get into the round of 4. He decided to win once again. So it wouldn't shock me if he did it again. I think we see a lot of guys who will win at Martinsville will also go on to win the championship. And I think also Chastain has probably a lot of the momentum. I know we talked a lot about him, but I just wanted to allude to that as well, that Ross Chastain probably has the second most momentum going into this. And Logano and Chase Elliott are probably a little worried right now. Chase Elliott, I believe, has the 10th best average finish of drivers, I believe, in the playoffs. Started from the round 16 throughout the whole playoffs, and he got into the Final Four. So he's got to be lucky there. But like going back, I think Christopher Bell is more than capable of winning when he needs to. He's been on the cusp in round of 8 and round 12, needed to win, get to the 8, did it. Needed to get to the round of 4 by winning in the round of 8. He did it once again. I mean, I think he could probably take home the championship too. He did it in the Truck Series. I can't remember off the top of my head if he did in the Xfinity Series, but he more than he can most definitely do it next Sunday in the Cup Series.
Yeah, I think if memory serves me correctly, I think Austin Dillon's the only one that has a Xfinity truck title who could win the Triple Crown, so to speak. I don't believe Bell had an Xfinity title. I know he came close a couple of times, but yeah, I think Bell certainly has some momentum with him, Matthew. I think there's obviously going to be a lot of talk about Ross Chastain, but I hope that Bell's win doesn't get completely overshadowed there, and I think if the previous 2 rounds are any indication, if the previous seasons that we've had under this format are any indication as well, anything can happen when you get to the championship 4. If you're in there, you've got a shot, and you can have a walk-off Game 7 style moment and take the win in the race and therefore the championship with it. So absolutely, Christopher Bell, not only has a shot at getting another walk-off win and taking home a championship as well, I think he's in very good position to do so.
Yeah, I totally agree with you guys. And Christopher Bell, he's been absolutely impressive in this playoffs, running well, having some really good runs, and then something happens, his back is against the wall, and he rises to the occasion. As I said, it's amazing to see this from Bell, because a lot of drivers, you don't really see this from him. When the pressure is on, some of them just crack under pressure and melt down, but that's not Christopher Bell. where when the pressure is on, I feel like that's when he performs his best. We saw it at the Roval, we saw it at Martinsville, and next week he's going to be able to go to Phoenix and try to do it as well. Phoenix is a really good track for Christopher Bell, so I'm sure he's really looking forward to that. And I think he's more than capable of getting that third walk-off win in this playoffs and taking home the hardware as well. And later in the race, we got a caution with Landon Castle getting up into the wall, setting up a tough decision for the team: stay out for track position or pit for fresh Goodyears. Most drivers pitted while Cole Custer and Chase Briscoe, in a must-win situation, stayed out trying to recover from a penalty that hurt him earlier in the race. Briscoe had clean air in the restart. It looked like Stewart Haas race and had outsmarted everyone until the number 14 Ford Mustang lost pace as Bell powered by him. After that, Briscoe faded all the way down to 10th place in the final laps. Was it a mistake for Briscoe to stay out, or was that his only shot at advancing, considering how challenging it was to pass today?
It wasn't a mistake. It was the right strategy. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, it might not seem like it in the results given how far he fell once he got past for the lead, but there were only a handful of laps left. I mean, if the race had been just a handful of laps shorter, we'd be talking about Chase Briscoe having the walk-off win and being the sleeper pick championship for. So it's, it was absolutely the right move. I think that, it was probably his last best Hail Mary kind of attempt, if you will. I hate to throw a stick and ball sports comparison in there, but I think this is what they had to do, and I think he was very well positioned for a while, especially with his teammate Cole Custer behind him. Once Keselowski and Bell got up there, and Bell in particular, obviously going on to pass both of them and win the race, I think that was when, I wonder if Briscoe maybe even backed off a little bit subconsciously, knowing that there wasn't as much to race for at that point because it was basically win or bust. So, but in terms of the move to stay out and inherit the lead, I think absolutely the right decision.
Yeah, sorry about if my mic's all messing up, guys, but I can definitely agree. I think that was the only possible decision that Chase Briscoe could have made in order to succeed. And I mean, like Ben just said, if there was 10, 15 less laps, we were talking about the worst statistical driver to ever make the round of 12, round of 8, get his way into the round of 4, just like that. But I mean, if that happened, we might not have seen a Ross Chastain. You could say Hail Mary, you could say Hail Melon, you could say whatever you want about that what just happened. But I think even if Chase Briscoe and the 14 team go back in time after knowing what had happened, is there really anything else you can do? Because even with 2 or 4 tires, his car had fallen off throughout the race and really wasn't running up there, mostly battling to stay on the lead lap. And if he just had that same setup, that same car he had in practice, or even the first round of qualifying, we would be having a different conversation here. But I definitely think this wasn't a mistake on Briscoe's part because we didn't really see a lot of passing unless you were simply moved out of the way here. So, yeah, I'm going to stick with Ben here on that one, that I think this wasn't a mistake by any stretch, and I don't think they could. I think if they did anything differently, he wouldn't have finished in the top 10.
Yeah, I think we're all in full agreement here with Chase Briscoe. I mean, there was nothing he really could have done. He basically was he was forced to do what the others didn't do. Everyone come to pit road, so he basically had to stay out. That was his only hope at trying to advance. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. The weekend started off really good for Chase Briscoe with an excellent qualifying run, and I know yesterday on the pre-race show we were talking about how Martinsville isn't traditionally one of Briscoe's best tracks, and for Stewart Haas Racing to build a fast piece like that, and for Briscoe to put in the work to run as well as he did today at Martinsville, more power to him. Trying to put himself in the best position to go bring back a championship next week for Stewart Haas Racing. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen. Briscoe should be really proud of the season that he's had and work towards further improving himself as a driver next year. And Christopher Bell and Ross Chastain experienced the highest of highs, while drivers like Chase Briscoe, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, and William Byron experienced the lowest of elimination from the playoffs. However, a driver who saw the lowest of lows today has to be Kyle Busch, who finished 30th, 6 laps down. The number 18 Toyota Camry wasn't handling well and lacked speed all day long. Busch was silent on the radio for most of the race, which is very uncharacteristic for him. At one point, NASCAR even had to warn him to pick up the pace and maintain minimum speed, something I never thought I would ever see. NASCAR telling Kyle Busch that he needs to keep minimum speed or potentially he could have received the black flag for going too slow. So starting with you, Matthew, on this question, were you shocked at how poorly Kyle Busch performed, and how sad is it that his tenure with Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota appears to be ending on such a disappointing, sour note?
I think, I mean, out of anyone, Kyle Busch is one of the greatest to ever do it in the sport, and to see him with the team that made him become one of the greatest ever in the sport, to just completely fall off the cliff, hit the ground, and then fall off another cliff that was created from the impact of hitting that ground here. Because I was at work. I work at Arby's as well, doing what I got to do, and I was occasionally checking Twitter, checking the group me where we all communicate, checking just my phone, simply the NBC Sports app, watching. And I'm like watching it. I'm like, why is Kyle Busch this far back? And then I watched the video after what Kobe sent about the NASCAR warning him. Kyle Busch was not even shifting a lot of the race into fourth gear. Like you saw a lot of onboard camera with Chase Briscoe shifting in, staying in third, shifting in the fourth really quickly, and then shifting right back down the third, because you pick up speed by doing that. Let the gears roll, etc. Kyle Busch was just chilling in third gear. It was kind of like when I did the Rusty Wallace racing experience in Oswego Speedway, not knowing how to shift because I was never taught manual. They just put me in gear and just let me go. I feel like that's what happened with the Kyle Busch Toyota Camry today, and I think it was just very, very unfortunate. And to arguably Kyle Busch helped Joe Gibbs become what they are. And just, I mean, we haven't talked about it, but Joe Gibbs earned their 200th career win today in the NASCAR Cup Series. Kyle Busch has, I believe, 56 of those. So, I mean, like, that's just an incredible feat. And it's unfortunate that it's ending on a disappointing note. And I was actually surprised. I saw some joke on Twitter about after Reddick had retired from the race, it kind of reminding us about Dale Jr. and Kyle Busch back when he was switching teams, when Jr. went over to Hendrick and Kyle Busch went over to Joe Gibbs, about how when Kyle Busch wrecked, Jr. also wrecked, but Jr. got into Kyle's car. It was very peculiar, and it could have been it's like a conspiracy theory, more or less, like just more of a fantasy thing. Like, it would have been interesting to see Kyle Busch just park that car and see if he could do it with Richard Childress. I feel like Toyota wouldn't let him race ever again after that would happen, because obviously different manufacturers, but it's just a very unfortunate end for Kyle Busch and Joe Gibbs Racing. And I feel like Joe Gibbs Racing is on a huge downfall right now after what we had just witnessed yesterday with his grandson Ty Gibbs, and then just everything going on. Although lucky Christopher Bell made the Final Four, but other than that, it's just been a very unfortunate year for Joe Gibbs Racing, and especially Kyle Busch being 6 laps down at Martinsville. That's just, I don't even know how else to describe it, so I'm going to throw it over to Ben here.
Yeah, it is very sad. Just to answer the question right off the bat, Michael Tiller saying, I knew Busch was in trouble with his previous actions and all, but to have those struggles, all I can say is that it was a tough break. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I think BJ McLeod passed him on speed today. Like, no disrespect to those guys.
Yeah, you're correct. BJ McLeod literally passed him on speed.
I mean, that tells you everything you need to know. And again, no disrespect to Live Fast or, the Rick Wares of the world and everything. They're out there doing what they can with the limited resources that they have. But their cars have no business passing any Joe Gibbs car on speed, let alone Kyle Busch. I think people make a good comparison, actually, ironically enough, with the team that Kyle's going to here. Kevin Harvick did not necessarily leave RCR in 2013 on very good terms. Of course, there was that infamous truck race at Martinsville where he kind of got into it with Ty Dillon and said, this is exactly why I'm leaving RCR next year. Because he thought that Childress was, basically clearing the way for his grandsons, Austin and Ty, to come up. And of course, Ty is on his own path and a different path now. But, I think people are seeing a lot of similarities, especially in light of what happened yesterday with Joe Gibbs Racing and Ty Gibbs. The fact that, we all know Ty's going to be in the 18 next year. I think it's probably the worst kept secret left in the garage at this point. That maybe Gibbs could have tried a little bit harder there at the end to find a sponsor to keep Kyle. Maybe, Joe Gibbs sees that putting his grandson in the 18 is a cheaper option, even if he has a sponsorship, than the sponsorship that Kyle Busch is going to command. And I think, knowing who Kyle Busch is and kind of having that carefree attitude. We've seen him, in his press conferences over the years, pull out the Marshawn Lynch, I'm just here so I don't get fined line, and everything is great. You have to wonder if he, I mean, it's not like he's got a consecutive season streak of wins to keep track of here. He already got that win at the Bristol Dirt Race earlier this season, so he doesn't really have much to race for. He's out of the playoffs. He's out of a championship hunt. He has been for a while. It would have been very ironic. I know we'll get into Reddick in here in just a second, but if Kyle had just said the 18 is undrivable and parked the car and gotten into the 8 race earlier too, I've got to wonder if maybe part of him wouldn't necessarily mind doing that at this point. But it's very sad to see, because the Rowdy documentary just came out this summer, and even up until then, there was this thought that Kyle Busch, yes, he had Bobby Labonte, a NASCAR champion with Joe Gibbs. Tony Stewart won a couple with Joe Gibbs, but Kyle Busch really took Joe Gibbs Racing even to the next level beyond that. Having one of the most iconic driver sponsor deals with M&M's, and that partnership which just seems so strong and it works so well. And then you factor in Toyota and his success in the Xfinity and Truck Series as well. There was always this thought that he was going to retire Joe Gibbs Racing and retire with Toyota, and obviously that's not going to happen now. And it's just very sad that it's not like he's even getting this retirement tour or anything to come with it. You've got Ty Gibbs coming up there, and that's where most of the spotlight is, and it's not going to end on the highest of notes there. So it's very, very unfortunate and very sad to see. And you have to think, Kyle Busch, as controversial as he is, I think he deserves better. I really do. And, I don't know if, I don't know why he was so slow today, if there's, just one explanation for that, but it's very sad to see. It really is.
Yeah, Ben, that's one way to put it. Just really sad to see. I was really shocked to see how fast Kyle Busch dropped through the field on that early green flag run, and see him running in the 30s, and then to get passed and put in last place. Yeah, and we think about some of our smaller underfunded teams in the Cup Series garage. All of those underfunded teams were faster than Kyle Busch during the first run, and for really most of the race. After the first run, Kyle Busch did get faster in speed, but it wasn't by much, and plus it was already so many laps down where it didn't really matter anymore. And I agree. I think Kyle Busch certainly deserves a better send off than what he's getting right now. And I believe that his wife Samantha Busch agrees. Reading a tweet from her saying heartbreak, and even when he has an ill handling car, he's been fighting his butt off each week to make the best of it and get the best finishes possible for his team after so many years, memories, wins, and championships. Hate to see this end on such a low note. So that's from Kyle's wife, Samantha Busch. Yeah, and I agree with everything she's saying. Kyle Busch has been well put. Say what you want to about all the controversies throughout Kyle Busch's career, or who he is as a race car driver. Kyle Busch poured his heart and soul into Joe Gibbs Racing and Toyota for many years. Toyota's most successful driver in their NASCAR history, and for Kyle Busch to be going out with mechanical issues, as we've seen in recent weeks, poor runs like we saw today, it's just super unfortunate that this is how it's going to end. Michael Tiller says that you have to agree whether you like Kyle or you hate him. That kind of a struggle was just horrible to watch, even getting past some speed. Totally agree with you, Michael. And we'll see how Kyle Busch ends his tenure with Joe Gibbs Racing next week at Phoenix Raceway. And early on, we saw Tyler Reddick drop out of the race because he wasn't feeling well, so he went to the Infield Care Center. Reddick was checked and released, but thinking back to his hard crash at Homestead last weekend, a worrisome story emerged from Jordan Bianchi at The Athletic. Bianchi said a member of Richard Childress Racing told him that Reddick wasn't feeling like himself after the hard wreck at Homestead and started feeling worse inside the car today when he rear-ended someone on track. On the radio, Reddick said his head was hurting, and obviously it was bad enough where he couldn't physically continue to race. And we've seen drivers, not feeling well before, but they continue and often need help out of the car. And for Reddick to be like, I can't go, I cannot finish this race, that's very telling in my opinion. And looking at Kurt Busch and Alex Bowman missing races because of concussions, how concerning is this new development with Tyler Reddick?
Oh, it's very concerning. It is extremely concerning, and it makes me wonder how he was cleared to compete this weekend if it's as bad as they're making it sound like. And again, this is why, to bring it back to the Ross Chastain incident, this is why I'm again, once it all calms down, I think people are going to look at this and say, was this really the smartest thing in the world to do? Because, you know, this car is not the panacea that Steve Phelps said it was, you know, particularly when it comes to safety. And, you know, we can throw in, you know, that the intermediate racing has improved and the short track racing, you know, we need to work on it there. The road courses are the same way, and factor all that in. But the number one priority has got to be unequivocally making these cars safer, particularly the rear ends. You know, it's very concerning, and it makes me wonder. I mean, obviously be thankful, but it makes me wonder, you know, how we didn't see drivers at the beginning of the year. Like, how did we make it until halfway through the season, really, when Kurt Busch had to step out without these concerns coming up again? You know, we've had this car for, you know, 9 months, almost a full season now, and you know, I mean, it's the same car. You know, it's not like, I mean, teams, you know, work on things all throughout the year, obviously, but you know, in terms of doing like a redesign from the ground up, like I know a couple of drivers have said this car needs, it's incredibly concerning. And you know, Reddick is not the first one that has had these issues. And you know, I've got to say, I don't know about Alex Bowman coming back next weekend. Like, I know it's a big deal for Ally. I know it's a big deal for Hendrick, and to be back from a championship is kind of like a feel good comeback story here. But if I were Alex Bowman, especially in light of this news today, I might just be content to just sit out and you know, let somebody. I don't know if Noah Gragson would want to do it again. I know he's going after the Xfinity title, obviously, as well. But that's the other thing. You know, what we're seeing with this Xfinity title battle, we have you know, I know Allmendinger got eliminated, but you know, to have Allmendinger filling in for Gragson in the McCulloch 16 car because Gregson's filling in for Alex Bowman in the 48, and then you have Ty Gibbs at 2311 Racing. That's kind of been your Xfinity Big Three this year. So those guys are out there in Cup cars that have safety issues, risking their Xfinity seasons now because other drivers have fallen out. I mean, it's just an incredibly concerning situation here. And you know, I'm thankful we only have one race left before we have an off season. But again, you know, it's not like we're going to have a brand new car again next year. We're going to have this generation of car ideally for at least 5 to 7 more years. Something has to change because as it is right now, it's incredibly concerning, to answer the question. Matt, do we have you?
Is he muted? Like, I mean, he's not muted on our end, but I wonder if he's muted from his end.
Matt, we can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
All right, I think Matt's going to try to reset again here. Kobe, I don't know if you want to take the question again.
Oh yeah, I guess while he resets, I'll respond to what you said, Ben. And I think it is extremely concerning. And I remember watching him crash last week at Homestead. Yeah, I was thinking to myself, I hope Tyler's okay, because you know, when we see these next gen cars hit nowadays, you have to be concerned that something may go wrong. You know, he got out of the car, looked fine, you know, so I didn't think nothing of it. You know, in the past with the Gen 6 car, you know, when someone would, you know, just hit the wall, you know, you wouldn't even be concerned, be like, oh, they're gonna be okay. But now you're really not so sure. And while we don't know what's going on with Tyler Reddick's health, you know, but and through the conversation of concussions, we know sometimes with certain people, you may suffer a concussion, but you may not feel the effects, you know, until like 5, 6, 7 days later. And Tyler Reddick said that his head was hurting bad enough that he couldn't continue to race. I find that extremely concerning. And Kurt Busch, you know, unfortunately, he wasn't able to finish his full-time racing career on his own terms. And Alex Bowman, I really think Alex Bowman is, you know, just coming back for the finale, you know, just to finish off his, you know, his working relationship with this crew chief, Greg Ives, who's going to be stepping down as crew chief at the end of the current season. But Ben, I tend to agree with you on this one. You know, if you're Alex Bowman, in light of what we saw today with Tyler Reddick, although you have a really good working relationship with Greg Ives, and you want to go out and you want to give him a proper send off by having one final race together, you really have to ask yourself, you know, is it really worth it to come back just for one race, or do I just wait for them to, you know, make the changes to the clip over the off season?
Well, I know, and that's a good point, Kobe. I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot about that. You know, it is Greg Ives' last race, and you know, I know 6 years ago, Alex Bowman was, ironically enough, subbing for Dale Earnhardt Jr. because Jr. was going through the concussion protocol and everything. And he very nearly took a shock win there. So, I know they have a lot of history of that track. It would be very fitting for them to end their time together there. And I think maybe that's part of the reason why Alex wanted to come back for this particular race. But, at the same time, I think if you're Alex Bowman, you really have to take into consideration, does the risk outweigh the benefit here? And I think in light of the Tyler Reddick story today, which of course we don't have all the information, we don't want to speculate too much, but I think, there's a lot to consider there, and it might be worth reconsidering if he wants to come back or not when it comes to the finale of Phoenix next week. Looks like we have Matt back here. Matt, do you want to take the question about Tyler Reddick?
Yeah, if you can you guys hear me? Just want to confirm.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
first,
Gary.
I'll make this super quick. I'm so sorry to all the viewers at home. I've switched devices 3 times for some reason. That's just not my day over on this end. So I really do apologize for all the technical difficulties that have come from my end. But just to make the point, I missed the last couple of seconds of the conversation. But just to discuss Tyler Reddick, I'm far more concerned about how NASCAR has handled this situation, simply because when you look at it, how can a driver have a hard hit like that, especially with all these issues, and then be cleared? I don't know if you guys discussed that, so I apologize for reiterating it, but like, what did we miss from Sunday in the infield care center till Sunday today? Like, what had happened there? And I'm also worried. I think Alex Bowman returning is more or less just to say I did it, but I really think he should pull like a Carson Hocevar at Sonoma. I think he should maybe start the race, but then have a replacement driver, someone like Justin Allgaier, or somebody who's a Chevrolet development driver, to replace him, because I don't think Alex Bowman should be out there yet, even if he's 100% ready. And I think Tyler Reddick should have the same situation. If he does not have a concussion, I think they should have somebody like Austin Hill, someone like Sheldon Creed, maybe on standby for RCR this upcoming weekend, because I never thought we would have this conversation where 3 potential concussions. We have 2 right now, but there's 3 potential ones. Just hope the best news for Reddick. But obviously I'm more concerned about how Richard Childress and NASCAR had handled this situation, because even the crew members said, oh, he hasn't been feeling well all this week. Like, I feel like that concerns you. I remember my first time ever flying on an airplane, I read Dale Jr.'s concussion autobiography. And in that, I believe he says something like, please don't, if you have an issue like this, don't go out there and race. So I get Reddick wants to end his RCR reign strong, just like I believe Kyle Busch would want to end his Joe Gibbs Racing reign strong. But Reddick should not risk his health for this. And obviously they said your health is more important. But was his health just as important throughout the week when he was clearly not feeling it? So makes me worried. I don't know if we're going to see anything come out of that. But for Richard Childress Racing to allow Reddick to drive knowing, especially crew members talking to journalists, knowing that he wasn't up to 100%. And then NASCAR for clearing him. I mean, they cleared him again today after what had happened. So for them to clear him, it just makes you wonder, is what I'm going to keep saying. What happened this past weekend, all the steps that they hit, because obviously health is the biggest concern in NASCAR and safety, but what did they miss? They missed something to allow Reddick to go out there and compete today and only compete for a handful amount of laps. I know a handful, there's 500 laps, but he didn't make it, I believe, halfway. I think he only made it to in the 100s, but it's unfortunate. So that's how I feel about that situation. It is very concerning, especially for this development with Tyler Reddick, who's joining a new team next year. But, I mean, they have a long offseason. Obviously, it's the shortest offseason in NASCAR, or in motorsport, and in pretty much all sport. Longest regular season, shortest offseason. So I'm worried, but I want to read Mr. Tiller's comment too about towards Tyler Reddick. I hope he's okay. You want to be in tip-top shape for when you race. If he's not well enough, get checked out and see what the doctor says. I think absolutely. I think what he should do is the same thing with Kurt Busch, same thing with Alex Bowman, same with Dale Jr. is call one of those professionals who worked with Dale Jr., get him on the phone, get it from Dale Jr., and just say, please check me out. Because without Junior going through all of this, we might not see him in the broadcast booth today with all of the issues making him stop racing. We don't want to see another thing happen with Kurt Busch retiring early from full-time racing. And I'm just happy Alex Bowman says he's 100% clear. worried, and that's going to be my very long answer here. I'm worried as a fan and a reporter here on this show. I'm very worried about what we just witnessed from Tyler Reddick and RCR.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Dale Jr.'s book because I've also read it and I cannot recommend it enough. Any athlete who has ever had a concussion needs to read that book. It is incredible what Dale is willing to put out there. Props to him for being so open with his journey, but it's incredibly insightful. And anybody that's gone through that, it's an absolute must read. Cannot recommend that enough. Before we get to your one shining moment, Matt, we do have some breaking news. Brad Keselowski has been disqualified for failing minimum weight. That won't change the playoff, of course. Bell is the winner. That is official. And as you can see from Bob Pockrass, make that 6 spots Chastain has gained now since the white flag with his crazy move that we've been talking about so much. Guys, I just want to get your reaction real quick. What's your reaction to the news that Keselowski's been disqualified?
As I guess I'll answer that one first, Ben. Well, my reaction is that's super unfortunate for Brad Keselowski because RFK Racing, they've been really on these last 10 races of the season. We're seeing Brad Keselowski run exactly where you would expect Brad Keselowski to run. I know at the beginning of the season, they went through a lot of growing pains. It was really tough for RFK Racing, really tough to see Brad Keselowski struggle so much, been a champion of the sport and always seeming to be in contention, for wins week in and week out during his tenure with Team Penske, and to see him run the way that he was running really during the first half, I guess 2/3 of the season, it was really sad to see because Brad Keselowski, is a better driver than what the car was showing. But these last 10 races, I said it on our past shows. If I'm Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher, I'm super excited for 2023 because I think both of those cars could get into the playoffs next year because there's the speed they've shown is just incredible. And Keselowski, being in contention to win there late in the race, showing remarkable progress. And is just super unfortunate for Brad that this great run they had today is all going to be for nothing in the end. And, but on the other side of things, Ross Chastain is still picking up positions right in the wall.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. I find that, I didn't expect that. I mean, I've been battling all these technical issues, so I didn't know that was coming. But I find that funny that Chastain technically passed 6 cars on the last lap. And something about RFK getting disqualified at these cutoff races. I remember, I believe Blaney's Daytona win, right? Last season, I believe Christopher Buescher got disqualified from finishing second because of an issue like that. And now at another cutoff race, technically, so the regular season cutoff, and now we're talking about the playoff cutoff, Keselowski got disqualified, I guess is the only way to put it. Just shocking. But I want to read that. So if you look at the results right now, well, I'm looking on my laptop right now. So if you count owner's points and regular playoff points here, so Bell was first, which playoffs, Larson playoffs, Blaney playoffs, Chastain playoffs, Hamlin playoffs, Logano playoffs, and Byron playoffs, and then Briscoe will be 9th. So you had 8 drivers in the 8 guys fighting for some sort of playoff spot, 8 of them in the top 9. And I just think that's kind of something to see. And then Chase Elliott will be 10th. So that's 8 of the playoff drivers. And then if you count Larson, you have to switch Larson Blaney anyway. But in the top 10, I mean, that's what you want to see from a race going into the final round. You want to see all of those guys give it their all. And clearly we saw there were no positions besides maybe, I believe it was Bubba Wallace was in, I believe, 8th now. Other than that, there's no other playoff drivers between them, and I just find that's a very fascinating thing I wanted to point out after Keselowski being disqualified, which stinks because I mean, as reporters here, you like to see guys be successful when they're not having success, and Keselowski is the definition of somebody you want to see do well, and it's an unfortunate thing for him. But yeah, that's my take. A little shocking. I didn't expect to hear that. I expected something else, maybe with Chastain, maybe something, but I guess Keselowski got disqualified, so sorry about that.
Oh, what a story it would have been if Chastain were the one that had gotten
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Completely
That
thrown
break
a
NASCAR
wrench into all of our discussion and made it completely irrelevant. But yeah, very unfortunate for Brad Keselowski. I know it's been a tough year for him, and I believe he's on a consecutive seasons of winning at least one race streak himself. So he's got one more chance to keep that alive at Phoenix next weekend, I guess. But I'm Matthew, I'm glad you brought that up as well. I think we're used to seeing that at Phoenix and in Homestead previously, to have all 4 of a championship four up there running 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we have a wrench thrown in that with Kyle Larson and this split owners championship battle that we've got. So it might be interesting to see if Larson can get up there in that mix as well. I know he's certainly going to be going for that owners championship, and that 5 team wants to repeat as owners champions. I think if you got to go back to the 60s, the last time we had a split drivers and owners championship in the Cup Series. Of course, it's happened several times in Xfinity in recent years, but certainly a lot to keep our eye on as we head to Phoenix next week. Matt, before we let you go and get into the F1 segment here, as we're already coming up on almost an hour, it's been a very lively discussion tonight. What is your one shining moment from this weekend in motorsports?
I think we all know what it is, but I'm going to say 3 little ones. I'm going to say, first of all, SVG being SVG with supercars. Can't wait to hear what Adam's discussion is going to be about. Breaks records. Formula One side, Max Verstappen, most wins ever in a single season. Obviously more races, but still. And for the Cup Series, obviously we know what it is. It's going to be the Sports Center #1 play. And if it's not, then it's rigged, obviously. But I'm going to say Joe Gibbs Racing, not because of the whole Kyle Busch situation, but because they got their 200th win. I mean, that's something they've been wanting to do for a long time, and good congrats to Joe Gibbs Racing. Obviously, Saturday was not good at any stretch of the imagination for Joe Gibbs, but I think today getting his the 200th career win with Christopher Bell, being that dog, like I said 3 times earlier in the show. So that's going to be my shining moment, because I don't want to share a shining moment with you guys. So.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for persevering through your technical issues there. We'll let you go, but thanks
guys.
Again for contributing to the discussion. We appreciate it.
Yep. Anytime, guys. I apologize once again to everyone at home for all my technical issues, which probably made the show way longer than it needed to be, but I'm happy to discuss anything with you guys. So once again, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. All right, well, Kobe, let's get into the F1 race recap here. Max Verstappen took yet another dominant win, his 14th of the season, which sets a new single-season record for most wins in Formula One. Michael Schumacher's 2004 season and Sebastian Vettel's 2013 season each saw those drivers take 13 wins. Verstappen has now eclipsed that mark. It's also Verstappen's 8th win in the last 9 races, from the French Grand Prix to today's Mexico City Grand Prix. His only non-win is a 7th-place run in Singapore. So, Kobe, we've got to talk about Verstappen, obviously, first here. With 2 races remaining and the potential to top out at 16 wins, where does his 2022 season rank among the most dominant F1 seasons ever?
And Ben, since we're closing in on an hour, I'm going to keep my Formula One answers, or at least try to keep them relatively short, since we have a recap coming at the end of the segment from our own Joshua Birch. But to answer your question, wow, it's been quite a dominant season for Max Verstappen. When I first started watching Formula One, I came up during the Sebastian Vettel era of domination with Red Bull. You know, it was a Sebastian Vettel world, and everybody else was just living in it. Nobody really had anything for Sebastian Vettel during his era of domination there. And I'm wondering if Max Verstappen could, get on that type of run as well that Sebastian Vettel did. Could we be entering the Max Verstappen era of domination like we saw with Sebastian Vettel? I don't know if I'd call it the most dominant F1 season ever, because I wasn't, obviously I wasn't around to, see some of the other dominant seasons in the past. As you mentioned, the Michael Schumacher 2004 season, I wasn't around for that one. But during my lifetime, I think it's right up there with Sebastian Vettel in that epic 2013 season.
Yeah, it's certainly up there. And I know Max has said, he doesn't take too much stock in breaking the single season wins record because there are more races these days. But if you look at the pace that he's been on, he's right there with the Schumachers and Vettels of the world in terms of the dominance that we've seen over the course of a single year. And he has an opportunity to continue to extend that record with a couple of races that we have remaining. Now, on that note, since he clinched the championship with a win in Japan, Verstappen has continued his run of race wins, taking victory in both the United States and in Mexico. Now, in the past, we've occasionally seen Lewis Hamilton during his run of championships struggle to take race wins after he clinched the championship early. In 2015, Nico Rosberg took victory in Mexico, Brazil, and Abu Dhabi, with Hamilton following him home in second each race. In 2017, he finished 4th in Brazil and 2nd in Abu Dhabi. And in 2019, Hamilton only won the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix after clinching the championship earlier with a P2 run in the United States. So, Kobe, are you surprised Verstappen's been able to maintain this level of dominance despite already having the World Championship locked up?
Before I answer that, Ben, got a comment right here from Michael Tiller saying that Max Verstappen showed that with the right car and the right style, you can really prove everything. We've been living in seasons where records keep getting broken, mainly from Hamilton, but now from Max. Appreciate that comment, Michael, and answering the question. No, I'm not surprised at all that that Max has been able to maintain this level of dominance. You know, even after wrapping up the title, Red Bull built an absolute rocket for this year, and I expect Max Verstappen, you know, he could potentially, you know, just win out the rest of the season. It's just been quite a year of dominance, you know, just 1 year after having, you know, the greatest Formula One championship fight ever, or one of the greatest championship battles of all time. And then this year, nobody had anything for Verstappen. And it'll be interesting watching Red Bull next year, you know, considering, you know, the penalty they got for going over the cap, you know, having less wind tunnel time, they won't be able to develop their car as much as their competitors. I'm wondering in 2023, are we going to see Red Bull, you know, come a little bit back to earth, and can Ferrari and Mercedes respond to the challenge so we can see a three-way fight on a week-to-week basis?
And let's talk about Mercedes a little bit. Of course, Mercedes as a team and Lewis Hamilton both only have 2 chances left to keep their streaks of consecutive seasons with at least 1 win alive. The last time Mercedes won the entire season without winning a single Grand Prix was 2011, while Hamilton has never failed to win a race in every year in which he's won a race in every year in which he's completed, that is. Mercedes have made gains in recent weeks, taking 2nd and 4th today with Hamilton and George Russell respectively, but Verstappen was still largely in command throughout. So, Kobe, with that in mind, do you see Hamilton or Russell winning in either Sao Paulo or Abu Dhabi to extend either of those streaks?
To be honest with you, Ben, I really don't see it happening at this point. I think Brazil, you know, is the last possible chance to see Lewis Hamilton, you know, keep his at least 1 win a season streak alive. But unfortunately, at this point, I see that coming to an end unless something really crazy happens, like Max Verstappen retires from the race, and Hamilton's on the correct strategy and has the pace to stay out front. Unlike Circuit of the Americas there at the end of the United States Grand Prix, I think it would have to take a perfect storm at this point for for Lewis Hamilton or George Russell to go to victory lane in 2023. I think time has really just run out from them. And we also have some more comments in the chat room. Oops. Yeah, right here from Michael Tiller saying that you're not surprised either. He practically just ran away with it there at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. And then we have another comment from SHT saying, man, the reliability of the Renault engine, the V6 hybrid air, has been absolutely terrible before the V6 hybrid air. The reliability of the Renault engine was decent. And you also adding that Max is just too good this season, that you also were not surprised that Max has been able to keep this to maintain this level of dominance. Trying to talk too fast there. And Dima says, you know, Max won in Mexico. like that one there. And more comment from Michael said, speaking of which, Max had gear issues at some point of the race, but it didn't hurt him too much. And like I said, Red Bull built the rocket. It's as strong as a bullet. And SHT, one more comment for him saying Mercedes, you agree with me, saying Mercedes needs a miracle and also have a clean race to win this season. So Ben, what do you think? Mercedes out of time?
I think they're running out of time. I would never count Lewis Hamilton out from Brazil or Abu Dhabi. I think Brazil is probably the better of his 2 chances. But, you know, like I said, I'm very surprised that it's been the entire season without him even so much as winning in 1 race. It reminds me, honestly, you want to talk about Sebastian Vettel's dominance. New regulations coming in 2014. And, of course, Daniel Ricciardo got a few wins in the Red Bull that year. But for Sebastian Vettel to go from that epic season of 13 wins, including 9 in a row, to not winning a race in 2014, and then, of course, moving to Ferrari in 2015, it's certainly a changing of the guard, and it very much is reminding me of that. So we'll see what the future holds for Lewis Hamilton, Mercedes here. Real quick, Kobe, I have a follow-up because I know we got to get to Josh's video. Of course, Mercedes are closing the gap on Ferrari for 2nd in the championship. So even with recent form, even if they don't win a race, we know Ferrari's unreliability has kind of bit them in the rear ends multiple times this year. Could you at least see Mercedes taking 2nd in the constructors in the next 2 races?
Absolutely. I think Mercedes has a good enough car right now to take that away from Ferrari. For some reason, you know, for Ferrari's form lately, you know, just hasn't been there at all. I know during free practice this weekend, we saw some flashes of brilliance from Ferrari, you know, and some not so much as Charles Leclerc, you know, backing it into the wall earlier in the weekend. So right now, I definitely think that if Hamilton and Russell keep running how they're running right now, I think they can get second in the constructors. As for Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, I think Ferrari is on the download for the rest of the season.
Well, Mercedes definitely looked like the second best team in the race this weekend, so we'll see if that form allows them to close that gap in these last couple of races. Now, our colleague Josh Birch could not be with us tonight, but he did send in his short little recap of the race, so we will play that for you right now.
Hey everyone, sorry I can't be with you, but here's a quick wrap up then of what I thought in the Grand Prix. We've just literally come off here from the review show as well, so filming this straight after as well. That's why I've got my own graphics on as well. But still, what a Grand Prix that was. But nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. I'm sure you've all been talking about it as well, or about to talk about it whenever this is going in the program. But here's my thoughts on it as well. We'll go through them quickly as well. Great race from Verstappen as well. Masterminding once again. Equals a new record in Formula 1 actually he makes. 14 wins in a single season. The most of anyone in F1 history. He becomes the most successful driver in a year. Red Bull become the most successful team in a year. 16 wins out of the 22 as well. In terms of history, it's more wins in a single season than even McLaren had back in 1988. Okay, further back, Hamilton second. That's getting closer. Sao Paulo, I've been saying this all season, Sao Paulo literally could be the race of the year we see for Lewis Hamilton. It's a sprint weekend, he can have a go and see what he can do going forward. I think Lewis could win in Sao Paulo. Sergio Perez though, Mexico erupted once again. Fantastic for him being on the podium, but it's the same top three as it was in 2021. I felt like we were watching the same Grand Prix in many parts in the race. George Russell in fourth. What started strong with a first in practice 2 and practice 3 ended up as a misery as well once again. Down in fourth position, was complaining about the tyres, came in with the 2 laps to go to change the fastest lap as well and help them in the fight against Ferrari and the constructors. He got it, 1:21.53, but what did it cost him as well? There could have been something that was wrong for Perez. Shouldn't really have taken the gamble. It's worked out this time, but just stay on the track. Ferrari, a disastrous weekend, probably their worst of the season as well. They've had some bad ones. 5th for Sainz, 6th for Leclerc. This is their worst, and I mean this because in terms of when they've had a competitive car, it's been nowhere. They've had a shocker, absolute shocker. And they were also the last drivers not to be lapped. Ricciardo, 7th, hit off Yuki Tsunoda as well, got the time penalty, somehow managed to get points as well after a bad qualifying and sort of a bad weekend. So that's great job from Ricciardo. He finishes ahead of Norris actually for only the 3rd time this season, I think. So well done to him. Ocon is 8th, Lando Norris 9th, and Bottas in 10th position. I've skipped down to Bottas because he is my driver of the weekend. He has been on it all weekend, always inside the top 10. In fact, I've got my stats sheet here somewhere in the commentary box. Here it is. Practice 1 7th, practice 2 9th, practice 3 in 8th, and qualifying in 6th position as well on my little stat sheets I use up in the commentary box with my notes. So Bottas, thumbs up, great weekend once again as well in the Alfa Romeo. Further down, Gasly 11th. He was just making some moves but was too far down and too much out of it throughout the Grand Prix. Then we get further down, Albon 12th. Good race for him. But yeah, for me, Gasly's move on Stroll, getting the time penalty sort of cost out of the way, should have been left. Albon 12th, Zhou 13th, made some good battles. Vettel 14th, Stroll 15th. Just a weekend to forget, and a season to forget as well for Aston Martin. Pretty much I'm doing my words as well. Schumacher 16th as well. Magnussen 17th. Difficult weekend for Haas with penalties as well all around the centre. Latifi 18th. He was 53 seconds off the back of Magnussen and 2 laps down. Why is that guy still in Formula 1? I've got no idea, though. My friend Tom Dillon, who's on the commentary with me, says that if Latifi does go to IndyCar, he'll win the 500. If that happens, I think he'll be one of the most overrated drivers to ever win an Indy 500. And I know you guys are going to say there's been a couple in the past. Alonso, heartbreak for him. Megan was literally almost crying in the commentary box as well because of that. He was running in 7th and the turbo let go, and that'll probably be a power unit change as well going into Sao Paulo. Yuki Tsunoda, though, out of the race on the first lap last year, he was the first retirement. He's the first retirement again in 2022 by being hit off by Danny Ricciardo, the car launching up in the air, breaking the rear tow rod, and breaking the suspension, and breaking the side pod as well. My personal opinion, though, guys, a forgettable race. Let's hope. We've had dead rubber races. America was fantastic. Mexico wasn't. Let's hope that Sao Paulo and Abu Dhabi are going to be the races to watch. But only 3 working weekends left. MotoGP next weekend, then it's Brazil, then it's Abu Dhabi, and then we all get a rest. I think, though, today has proved I could definitely do with a longer sleep. Well, I think I'll watch the Grand Prix again to have a good night's sleep, though.
Thank you, Josh. Last but not least, the second and final race of the Repco Supercars Championship weekend at Surfers Paradise ended with Shane Van Gisbergen sweeping the Gold Coast 500 weekend, picking up his 21st win of the year and another showing of complete dominance. After fending off Will Davison early in the race, we got a safety car close to the end for the stalled Tickford Racing Ford Mustang of Thomas Randall. Even stacking the field back up couldn't help runner-up finisher Chaz Monster beat SVG, who once again proves unstoppable. Adam, I'm glad to see that you're still awake since we've had such a really long show. We've officially run out of things to talk about regarding Shane Van Gisbergen. Right into section, I was trying to come up with a question about SVG, but I'm at a loss. There's really nothing we can really talk about regarding Shane Van Gisbergen. So how nice was it to see supercars back on the Gold Coast for the first time since 2019? And do you prefer this 250-kilometer race weekend over the 300-kilometer races from the past?
Well, Kobe, before I answer those questions, I actually have some news regarding another driver, Anton De Pasquale. Anton De Pasquale has been disqualified from the race 32 results at the Boost Mobile Gold Coast 500. And this is from the Stewards Report. After the race and following admission by Racing Team Australia, PTY Limited, that during a pit stop for car 11, the incoming rear left tire on the car was below the minimum pressure of 17 psi when fitted. The stewards imposed the recommended minimum penalty of disqualification from race 32 on car 11, Anton De Pasquale. Anton would have finished 10th in that race. Now getting back to the question, it was just pure awesome, incredible to see the supercars back on the Gold Coast. In the beginning, the NTT IndyCar Series ran here for a long time on a longer version of the circuit. And it was just nice to see the fans back at this track. And, Shane Van Gisbergen, think about it. This year will go down as one of the greatest years in supercars history. The most wins ever in a season. I don't think that record is going to be broken for a long, long time. And you think about it, you can say now he's up there with the greats of the sport. Names like Jamie Whincup, Scott McLaughlin, Craig Lowndes, Mark Scaife, Peter Brock, Dick Johnson, Alan Moffat, Larry Perkins. SVG is on an incredible journey, and I prefer the 250-kilometer race, Kobe. And next time out, we're going to an iconic track as well, the Adelaide Street Circuit in Adelaide, and it will also have 250-kilometer races. So an early Christmas present for supercars fans all over the world.
Yeah, we're really excited to see the Adelaide 500 return. It was quite a successful weekend on the Gold Coast and supercars return there. And Adam, I don't know if I don't know if I would word it in the way you did, that this is the best season in supercars history. I would actually say it's the most dominant season in supercars history, because to me I guess your best season ever in supercars to me would be, not Shane Van Gisbergen winning all of these races. It would be, an extreme level of parity with the championship, going down to the final race of the season. That's what I would consider the best season ever, in my opinion. Before we move on to the final question, I have a comment here from Michael Till responding to Joshua Birch's Mexican Grand Prix recapping. You also agreed that the Mexican Grand Prix wasn't that exciting, though it was cool to see Lance Stroll go from P20 to P15, even though he couldn't work past that. But that was still impressive to you. Really appreciate you for sticking around this long, Michael. 1 hour 15 minutes into our program. You're a real trooper for sticking around this long, and everyone else who's been watching this long wrap-up show. Throughout the weekend, we saw several drivers get involved in incidents and damage their cars, especially the teams who just finished repairing their cars, fall in a very costly Bathurst 1000. one big accident that happened in race 2 was James Golden hitting the tires and getting into the wall, spinning in front of the field. The drivers behind had nowhere to go as the track was blocked. Besides Golden, others involved include Thomas Randall, Brock Feeney, Nick Percat, James Courtney, Lee Holsworth, and Macaulay Jones, whose car burst in the flames. Feeney said teams are trying to get ready for the Gen 3 era in 2023, but those who suffered even more damage following Bathurst and Surface Paradise now have to spend more to get the current cars ready for its final outing, and the season ended Adelaide 500. Could the crash repairs in the last third of the season put some teams behind at the start of next year?
Absolutely, Kobe. And one thing I want to bring up is if you're watching the broadcast, you saw on the backstretch they had tire bundles. And Nick Burkhart brought up a great point during the broadcast. Those tire bundles are like old tires, and it's like that was the reason for James Golding's crash. And yeah, it's gonna, a lot of teams are starting to prepare for the Gen 3 era. So I'm glad to see supercars have a break before the Adelaide 500 the first weekend in December, so teams can fix all these broken cars and get ready for the season finale.
Yeah, it's for sure. However, I think if you're a team, like AAA, Dick Johnson Racing, I think he'll be fine. I know AAA will have Brock Feeney, up and running good as noon in no time. But some of the smaller teams, like we see in the NASCAR Cup, see smaller underfunded teams. The same thing over in Supercars. I think it's going to be a lot harder for him, especially for James Golden's team. Try to fix this car and get it ready for Adelaide coming up in several weeks' time. And get the car ready for the season finale while you're trying to get your inventory set for next year. And what the type of technology and type of car they're switching to next year is a lot different than what they have right now. So they need to make sure they all have their ducks in a row. But these teams are professionals. They've been through a lot of hard times before, and especially through the pandemic. That was a really difficult time. Not just for supercars team, but for teams struggling for survival all over the world. Yeah, but I'm sure they're going to be perfectly fine. And those who suffered damage at Bathurst and on the Gold Coast, they're gonna come ready for Adelaide. And a comment there from Michael Tiller said, "Thank you, really appreciate you, Michael. Glad you continue to come back and watch our Grid Network programming. You're one of our loyal viewers." Next, we're going to bring Ben back in to close the show with our one shining moment.
Thank you both for the Supercars coverage. And like Kobe, like you just said, we'll start with Adam here. What is your one shining moment from this motorsports weekend that we've just witnessed here?
It's got to be the Repco Supercars Championship going back to the Gold Coast. It was awesome. It was iconic. It was cool to see the cars, back at this track for the first time since 2019. It was it was cool. Sun, sand, speed. And also Red Bull wrapped up and also Triple Eight Race Engineering wrapped up the 2022 Teams Championship as well with SVG's 2 wins. So the Repco Supercross Championship being back on the Gold Coast, and also it was cool to see Scott McLaughlin there too. So the Repco Supercross Championship being back at the Gold Coast is my one shining moment.
And I like to give my one shining moment to Ross Chastain for giving us something to talk about tonight, because without Ross, it would obviously be a much shorter show, and we had some intriguing things to talk about tonight. What was the move from Ross Chastain? Really silly, erratic, desperate. Yes, yes, it was. Is that something that we should see again in the name of safety? Probably not, but. That was a really crazy, spectacular moment, in the heat of the moment, and to see him be able to pull it off and be successful, that I'm still at a loss of words over that move. And as I said earlier in our program, probably going to watch it a few more times tonight because that was, such an incredible thing to watch. Ross Chastain video game it through turns 3 and 4, pick up all of those positions that he needed to advance to the championship 4. Because if Ross hadn't, thought outside of the box and make such a risky move like that, going through 3 and 4 under normal speeds, he would have been out. So like, wow, I guess that's all I can say. Like Kobe White would say, who played for North Carolina. Wow.
Well, Adam took supercars, Kobe took NASCAR. I guess that leaves Michael and I to go with Formula One here. And I'm going to share your one shining moment. It has to be Verstappen breaking the record to have the most wins in a single season. Like I said before, these seasons have been nothing but breaking records. And what more can you say about Verstappen and Red Bull at this point? I know they've been in a little bit of controversy these last couple of weeks with the cost cap and him boycotting the Sky interviews because of something that Ted Kravitz said. And I'm sure fans are going to have their varying opinions on that. But in terms of his performance on track, there is absolutely no debate. He is the fully deserving 2022 world champion. He is on a record-setting pace and could continue to extend that record now. 14 wins. What more can you say? Absolutely a deserving one shining moment from this weekend here.
Yeah, for sure. And before I end the show, I wanted to share a stat from jski.com reporter Dustin Albino. He said the average speed of Ross Chastain's final lap was 100.483 miles per hour, and the next closest was Kyle Larson at 94.585 miles per hour. So Ross Chastain was a whole 6 miles per hour faster, right in the wall, and it really looked like he was going much faster than that. So just ending there with a little stat and taking a look at our schedule for the next few days. Tomorrow, Monday, I'm gonna be on the Grid Live Encore show with Ben. We're gonna be talking about one of the biggest stories of the weekend: Ty Gibbs dumping his Joe Gibbs Racing teammate Brandon Jones in the Xfinity race on the final lap at Martinsville. Many fans and drivers alike were voicing their displeasure over this move. And on Wednesday, another edition of Grid Tonight with myself and Joshua Birch, talking about the latest news in the racing community. Also want to remind everybody to be sure to follow us on social media. Also want to give a big thank you to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Mark, Deschelle, and Robin. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. You've supported us a lot throughout the 2022 racing season. I hope you continue to do so beyond 2022. Click on the link to join our Patreon or buy me a coffee for a one-time donation. You can also use Public.com to invest in the stock market. Use the code GRIDnet to earn free stocks. You really want to get started and utilize the stock market for your own personal investment. For Ben Snyder and Adam Limmeries, I'm and also Matthew Bro and Joshua Birch. I almost forgot them. See, I'm hungry, trying to get off here as soon as I can. I'm Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful week.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform Public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on Public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on Public.com.